طب احنا نبدأ بسم الله.
بسم الله.
Assalamu alaikum and good day everyone, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I would like to welcome all of you to this fifth episode of Asia Middle East Forum webinars. It's an honor to have you with us today. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule to join us today. I think for some of us, it's already evening time, and for others, it's still afternoon time. So this participation from different parts of the world shows indeed your interest and concern about better understanding of international issues, your concern about noble values, about justice and people's rights, and particularly the situation in Palestine. In this webinar, we have a special guest, a prominent supporter of the Palestinian cause, a professor, an academic, a strategist. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Prof. Dr. Nazari bin Ismail. Prof. Nazari is currently the chairman of BDS Malaysia. He is also a professor at the Faculty of Business and Accounting at the University of Malaya in Malaysia. He was the dean of the faculty until June 2015, and he was also the head of the university's strategic planning unit from 1996 to 1998 and from 2006 to 2009. He has written several books, and he has also consulted as well as provided training programs to a number of public and private sector organizations, including the Prime Minister Office of Malaysia. He was the 1999 Fulbright Foundation Malaysian Scholar at the University of Michigan, and he was a visiting fellow at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies in the United Kingdom. Prof. Nazari obtained his bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Wales, and it was followed by an MBA from the State University of New York. And he then obtained his PhD from the Manchester Business School in the United Kingdom. Our talk today is entitled The Boycott of Israel Movement, Present State and Future Prospects. It's timely and relevant topic as it addresses efforts to raise the voice against injustice in the midst of attempts to normalize military occupation and violation or indeed termination of people's rights as we see the wave of Israeli penetration into other countries, especially in Asia and the Muslim world. Before I give the floor to Prof. Nazari, let me please give a chance to Dr. Makram Balawi to give and to share with us some introductory remarks. Dr. Makram, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brother Bilal. It's a great honor to host Professor Nazari, an old friend and a very adamant supporter of the Palestinian cause indeed. We have known him for quite some time now. Such a great brother and supporter. We hope that today's lecture would shed some light on the boycott movement. And in my opinion, that the Palestinian people wouldn't get their rights, normal rights, unless the offender, the Israelis, are pressurized. And a major tool of doing this is a boycott movement, whether it's a BDS movement or people in other working on other levels and aspects, for example, the parliamentarians and maybe in political sphere even. I've watched BDS since its beginning, and I think it is an admirable case, and it should be not only welcomed, but it should be also studied as a successful case of activism, especially in favor of Palestine. I don't want to take more of Professor Nazari's time. I'm very anxious to listen for what he's going to say. I'm sure that we'll all be enlightened. Thank you again, Professor Nazari, for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Makram. So without any further ado, Prof. Nazari, begin, please. You have 30 minutes to address the audience. After that, we have, inshallah, a Q&A session.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulil karim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you very much, Brother Bilal and Brother Makram, for inviting me to give this presentation tonight. Inshallah, I will share with you our work in BDS in Malaysia, as well as our cooperative work with the BDS movement around the world. My focus will be the movement as coordinated by the BDS National Committee, which I will explain afterward. I'll be using some slides. I'm going to share the slides now, if you don't mind. Okay. Can you see the slides? Can I?
Yes, we can see it, Prof.
Okay, all right. I will continue then. Okay. Now, as we all know, some of you may know, the global BDS movement was actually launched by the Palestinians in 2005, supported by more than 170 Palestinian NGOs, which are consisting of three components: the refugees in exile, the Palestinians under occupation in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and the discriminated Palestinian citizens of the illegal state of Israel. And the three demands, this is the most important aspect, which everybody should take note, is the three demands of the BDS movement, which is recognize the right of return of Palestinians as enshrined under the United Nations Resolution 194, and the occupation of the West Bank, as well as the blockade of Gaza. And the third one is ending the oppression and discrimination of Palestinians living in the so-called Israel at the moment. So as long as these three demands are not met, then the BDS movement calls the whole world, especially people with conscience, to boycott Israel. Now, the movement, the global movement, is coordinated by the BDS National Committee, which was set up in 2007 after the conference in Ramallah in 2007, and at the moment is coordinating all the activities around the world. And this is the strength of the movement at the moment, because it's coordinated, and therefore we work together with BDS activities spread from Europe, America, North America, as well as in Asia, all the way to Korea, as well as in Japan. These are some of the members of the BDNC. In the case of Malaysia, we were set up in 2015. I don't want to go to the details, but these are some of the NGOs which work together to set up BDS Malaysia. And we work together with the global BDS movement, and we work closely with the BDS National Committee. So we refer to them on policy issues. For example, what are the targets, organizations that we should boycott? We discuss with the BNC, as well as other campaigns which are done all over the world at the same time. So we refer to them. And but of course, we are quite different from other countries, because Malaysia do not have any diplomatic and supposed not to have any trade relation with Israel. Therefore, our bar is higher. We do not, for example, we also, besides working with the BNC on the certain targets, but we also have a policy to call the Malaysian government and Malaysian people to completely boycott any company that comes from Israel, any goods that come from or produced by Israeli companies. So we call our Malaysia to be part of the global BDS movement to help strengthen it. And let me just share with you what are the targets of the Malaysian boycott efforts. Number one is we call the Malaysians to boycott Hewlett-Packard. This is a global target actually. This is also the main target of the global BDS movement. And as you know, we know that this company is very much, HP is very much involved in the injustices going on in Palestine because they are the one that provides all the support, IT infrastructure support to the Israeli military. So we are lucky because we found out from the BDS National Committee about this particular company. They did research about this company, and even though they are trying to get away from the boycott by setting up other companies using other names, but they are still involved. The company is still involved in helping the Israeli military. The another company which is also a main target of BDS Malaysia as well as the global BDS movement is the G4S, the security company, which is a contractor for the Israeli military. They take care of the prisons in over there, where the Palestinian prisoners are tortured and some of them have died inside there. So we also target G4S because G4S also operate in Malaysia. We also target the Caterpillar, which is also the global target of global BDS movement. As we know, the Caterpillar provides the military machines, big machines, which we can see in the picture here, that are used by the military, the Israeli military, to bulldoze orchards as well as homes and Palestinian villages. So this company is a very important target of the global movement, and this company is actually also existing, being distributed by a Malaysian company in Malaysia in the Asian region. So this is a very important target for us also. And this is another one, which is the Hyundai Heavy Industries, which also supplies equipment to the Israeli military to destroy Palestinian homes. But I want to mention here that Hyundai Heavy Industries is not the same as Hyundai Motor. So we do not call people to boycott Hyundai cars. We only call people to boycott Hyundai Heavy Industries, which supply all these machines that destroy Palestinian homes. And of course, the last one is Puma, which is the latest one. The reason is because of Puma's involvement with the Israeli Football Association, which recognize the football clubs in the illegal settlements. By right, Israel should be asked to leave FIFA because of this, because they are illegal clubs, because they are located on illegal lands owned by the Palestinians. And Puma, being a supplier of sports equipment to the Israeli Football Association, is involved, therefore, in the injustices and therefore deserve to be boycotted. And the last one is the cosmetic company Ahava, which produce cosmetics produced from ingredients stolen from or located on stolen Palestinian lands. So is boycott important or not? We know that boycott contributed to the end of the South African apartheid regime which was in power for many decades in South Africa, but ended in 1994. What was the main contributing factor? It was because of the global boycott of South Africa. So boycott is actually a very powerful means of stopping or ending apartheid regime. And as you know, Israeli government or Israel is an apartheid regime at the moment due to their treatment of the Palestinians. So we saw what happened in South Africa. There was apartheid there, and it was very bad. But at the end of it, it was ended in 1994, all because of the boycott efforts all around the world. And the reason why it was successful, because it was coordinated and it was global. It was global, and this is what we want to achieve. The boycott should be a global thing, not only among some countries, among some communities, or among Muslims. We want everybody to boycott Israel, including Europeans, including Americans, as well as the Asians. So if we get the whole world to boycott Israel, then there is no way Israel can continue to function. They will be under a lot of economic stress and difficulty, and they will end just the way the apartheid regime of South Africa ended. So they are actually very fearful of boycott. We can see their reports. They discuss about the economic cost to them. And at the moment, the boycott effort is being supported by many groups around the world, including, I have a list here of UK academics who gave their names to a commitment by UK scholars to right of Palestinians. An example here of a historian professor at Cambridge, University of London, who refused to accept $1 million academic prize because of her disagreement with Israeli policies. Her name is Professor Catherine Hall. She decided she didn't want to go to Israel to accept the prize, even though it's quite a substantial amount of money, $1 million, because she said, I want to have nothing to do with the Israeli regime, and she boycotted the function. Also, Israel was boycotted by Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking, and now it's getting more support, even in America. This is a very famous sports personality, Michael Bennett, who refused to go to Israel as an ambassador of GUI. So he didn't join his team, American football team, to go to Israel because he said, I don't want to go there because of he says over there are a lot of injustices going on. And this is, of course, a very famous personality, Roger Waters of the rock band Pink Floyd, very famous in the 1970s, 1980s among the older generation. Now you can see even students supporting the BDS efforts. This is a union of college students in London. Academicians from Columbia University signed a petition in support of BDS. We have many Jews now all over the world, especially in America, who are not worried to put their name in the list of supporters of BDS movement. And this is a slap in the face of the Israeli lobby because these are Jews. And now they are very worried. And we can see reports about how the BDS is growing, even in America itself. Let me see now. This one is a New York student government passes BDS resolution. And then we have a couple of victories. This is in 2018. Afterward, I can share the list of 2019. We have a couple of victories of the BDS movement. We have Airbnb pulls out. We have Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar who openly support BDS. And then we have another artist here who pulls out of Israeli festival after a backlash. We have a very famous musician from New Zealand who canceled a concert in Israel because of the pressure from the BDS movement. We have a Chilean Congress here who votes to ban products from illegal Israeli settlements. And also some news report of arms embargo. Dublin City Council pledged support for Israeli boycott. And they also announced a boycott of HP machines as well. And also asked the government to expel the Israeli ambassador. We have a Nobel Prize winner here who supports BDS movement. His name is George P. Smith, renowned scientist, also publicly support BDS efforts. And we have here a report that says the global reach of the BDS movement is maybe best highlighted this is edition of the BDS Global Day of Action, which took place in 23 countries. And the fact that the 8th annual Israeli Apartheid Week was organized this year on campuses in 202 cities across the world. Therefore, that shows how widespread is the support for BDS now. We have some more report of supports of the BDS. This is in South Africa by the University of Johannesburg. Public awareness all over the world also, especially in Europe and the US. You have people now very aware of the issue of BDS. And here, there is another 20 highlights of BDS impact into what I mentioned before was 2018. This one is 2019, but maybe I don't have the time to cover all of that, so I will just leave it there for the moment. You can go to the BDS website and you can look at this list yourself. If I have time later on, if there's during Q&A, we can discuss this, what we have achieved in 2019. But what are the effects on Israel? We can see now that BDS has now, people are discussing, even in Israel itself, they are worried about it, they are discussing it. You have in 2000, as early as 2014, Secretary of State John Kerry mentioned about increasing delegitimization and talk of boycotts. And you have ministers, Israeli minister talking about it, being worried about it. You have Israeli president himself saying that it's a strategic threat of the first order to Israel. And Justice Minister say that the BDS movement is a terror organization. So there are those so desperate to paint the BDS movement as an evil movement, even though it's actually a peaceful movement. Where there's no military aspect of it at all. This is peaceful movement, but the Israeli government is so desperate, it want to paint it in a very negative way. It mentioned it word they use is terror organization, as if to equate it with a terrorist organization. And they are ramping up against BDS activists, having a list of which they will stop people who are active in the BDS activities in America from entering Israel. And we have comments here by some of the ministers saying that BDS is a cultural and academic, the greatest threat faced by Israel. The cultural and academic BDS campaign is the greatest threat faced by Israel. And Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel said BDS is Israel's most serious strategic threats. And Finance Minister said Israel may face economic crisis if boycotts increase. So they are obviously very, very scared. And here is another comment by the late President of Israel himself, talking about how BDS is a security threat to the state of Israel. There was a conference organized also where the Minister of Transport said that they call for the focused civilian elimination of the leadership of BDS. So they are so desperate, they want to make sure that the leadership of BDS are eliminated. I don't know how they want to achieve that, because this is a democratic right all over the world for people to express their support for BDS efforts. But so worried are they that managed to influence the American government. Even Obama signs anti-BDS bill into law before he went off from office. And there was an effort by senators to make it a federal crime in America, because obviously the BDS support for BDS in America is getting stronger by the day. Even Hillary Clinton, when she was campaigning for BDS, campaigning for presidency, made a promise that if she ever become a president, she will make countering BDS a priority. But of course, as we know, she lost her election, her bid for the presidency of America to Trump. And of course, another report here, Ambassador Nikki Haley vows to defend Israel against BDS. That shows how scared they are. They are talking about it, right? And the Senate had to pass an anti-BDS bill, sending them to the House of Representatives, which then passed it. So Israel is becoming very scared now, because the support also comes from among the youth, among American youth. They are now very much aware of what's going on in Palestine, and therefore the support for Israel is going down and down all the time. Even among Jews, especially among the young Jews. So the younger Republicans are less supportive of Israel, another poll finds. So the new poll say Americans' support for Israel falls to its lowest in a decade. And so we can see that in the country that is the most strategic for Israeli survival, Israel is becoming, support for Israel is becoming weaker and weaker. And this is because of the efforts of the BDS activists over there in America. So now Israel is very weak. It's very much weaker than it was in the past. And we know the Zionist project is a colonialist project. It depends, the success depends on too many factors. The seriousness of the West in supporting this project and the internal strength in Arab and Muslim countries in opposing Israel. So weaknesses in American and European economies will mean weakness in their support for Israel. We are seeing this all the time now. The American economy, the European economies are getting weaker, and the COVID pandemic has really weakened their economies. And among the working class people in America, especially among the youth who are having problem finding jobs, they are wondering why are the American government spending so much money helping Israel when the Americans themselves are having a lot of economic problems and they need support from their government. Why is American money being spent to support Israel? So this is the reason why Israel is getting weaker, and therefore that's the reason why BDS efforts are getting stronger and stronger over there. A democratic and just environment is very important. And we can see this, for example, in Egypt, we see that the support for Palestine is very strong during the Morsi era, and now weaker under the Sisi, and we know the reason why is because the Egyptians themselves are not able to express their support for BDS because of the lack of democratic rights in Egypt. And this is the same thing in other countries which are not democratic and led by despotic, autocratic rulers tend to consider having relationship with Israel. But even though their population, the society at large, maybe 90% are not supportive of Israel at all and are supportive for the Palestinians instead. So in conclusion, we must contribute to efforts to boycott companies that support injustice in Palestine. This must be a coordinated global effort. And Alhamdulillah, I will say that at the moment the BNC, the BDS National Committee, is quite well to coordinate it globally. I have a regular meeting by online meetings. Tomorrow I'm going to have another meeting to discuss boycott of HP. This is coordinated also by BNC. But we need to work harder to ensure victory, and we need to make the effort of BDS more popular among people, and we must educate people. To do that, we must educate people on what's happening in Palestine at the moment. And Alhamdulillah, it's not so difficult now because of the social media and everything. We can share very easily the news from Palestine. Okay, thank you very much. That is my presentation, and let's have some discussion about this.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. I think you have shared with us your great experience in the BDS movement, and it shows to stop the violation of the Israeli occupation against the Palestinian people. We really appreciate that. To raise what you have just mentioned, I think Prof. Nazari started the introduction about the BDS movement. So it was established in 2005 by activists, and it was a response to the Israeli occupation. And there were three main demands. The first is to recognize the rights of the Palestinian people, to end the occupation in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and to end other violations of rights in other parts of Palestine. Prof. Nazari then also talked about the experience of BDS in Malaysia. The Malaysian chapter was established in 2015. And in Malaysia, it worked hard to strengthen the world movement of BDS, and they also organized campaigns against international companies that support the Israeli occupation. And Prof. Nazari gave some examples about their campaigns. Also, after that, Prof. Nazari shared with us some of the victories of BDS, how it has been effective, how it has reached to many parts of the world. He talked about Congress, a number of US who supported. He also cited some of the support from other influential persons, some artists and officials. Prof. Nazari highlighted some of the statements that came from Israeli officials and even from some of the US officials who said that BDS is basically a strategic threat to the Israeli occupation, and that proved to be true as they continued to reach out to other people in the world to show the violation of and the aggression of the Israeli occupation. So Prof. Nazari highlighted in particular one of the statements came from a former US Secretary of State, John Kerry. He said that BDS is basically, it came in part of efforts to delegitimize the state of Israel. So all of these things came in response to the great efforts of BDS. It tells us about the hard work that has been done by the activists and the supporters of Palestine. And Prof. Nazari at the end said that Israel is much weaker now. It has relied mainly on the seriousness of the Western support, and it also relied on the internal situation in Arab and Muslim countries. But now we can see that there are signals show that Israel is not that strong and it can be defeated. And there are calls at the final stage of the Prof's talk that there are calls to continue the support for BDS and to continue the activities that encounter the Israeli occupation in other countries. I think that is an overall idea of what Prof. Nazari has shared with us just now. I open the floor for Q&A session. We now could have a few questions from the participants, some comments, of course. Please, any brother or sister here, you can start with introducing yourself and then share your thought or question.
That was a conference organized by Malaysian government a couple of months back, right? But I don't understand. I can't hear the question. I don't understand. We know about the parliamentarians, but I'm not sure what they have achieved so far, because there are in certain countries, for example, I met a parliamentarian from Thailand, for example, right? Also from Singapore. They have not been able to achieve much because they have to work with the parliament. Now, of course, there is a BDS movement in Thailand as well. We don't have one in Singapore at the moment. Just to give an example, the one in Thailand, actually, they are not parliamentarians, they are actually activists. Alhamdulillah, they managed to cancel a conference which was supposed to be organized at the university in Bangkok because the university's conference involved another university from Israel. Specifically, they were based in the West Bank. So because of that, the BDS activists in Bangkok protested because this university, which is located in the West Bank, is not supposed to be able to join this conference. And the conference decided to cancel the participation of the Israeli university from the West Bank. So that was an achievement in Thailand. I think that was one of the biggest achievements, and In other words, they can do quite a bit of effort. They can succeed quite a bit, more than what the parliamentarians were able to do in Thailand itself, just to respond to the issue of the parliamentarians. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah.
Any other question or comment from other participants? Please.
Yes, Bilal.
Doctor, yes, please.
Is it better now?
Yeah, we can hear you very well, and we can see you moving.
Yeah. My question was to Dr. Nazari that how would we be able to convince more MPs like YB Sayyid Ibrahim to pass laws and resolutions in favor of the boycott movement in their, of course, countries, not only in Malaysia? This is question number one. And question number two is, we managed to notice that the BDS included more non-Muslims and in the movement, and indeed many of them are in fact Jews. Could you explain to us how you managed to do that, and how could we include people from different racial backgrounds? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, first, with regard to the first question, in the case of Malaysia, when it comes to the parliamentarians, recently there was an effort by YB, or the Member of Parliament Said Ibrahim, who managed to gather more than 130 signatories, people who signed a petition in support of an effort to bring the issue to the United Nations, to kick out Israel from the United Nations. Now, how do we manage? Alhamdulillah, one of the reasons why he was so motivated is because he is very aware of the issue of Palestine from his for a long time. So because of the awareness, that is why he is very keen and very strong in his support of the Palestinian issue. And Alhamdulillah, the other members of parliament also, many of them are aware, including some non-Muslim also. There is one who was a socialist leader before. Because of the socialist background, he was very aware of the Palestinian issue as well. So in other words, the most important thing is, again, awareness. And of course, being politicians, they also have to think about their constituency, whether the issue is popular among their constituency or not. If they are aware, but their constituencies, the people in his area are not supportive of the cause, then he is also not going to be very motivated. In the case of Sayyid Ibrahim, his constituency is very aware, partly because they are mostly Muslim constituency. So therefore, he is not gonna, his support for the Palestinian cause is not going to erode his support among the constituency. So in other words, we have to work at all levels. We have to work at the parliamentary levels as well as the society's level, because once the society is aware of the issue, then they will support their parliamentarians, their members of parliament in this issue. If they are not aware, then the parliamentarians are very nervous about touching this issue because it may not be a popular issue. That's the reason why, in the case of BDS Malaysia, we want to make sure we don't only work with politicians, we work straight to the people. We want to make sure all the people understand this issue, because once the people support the Palestinian cause, the parliamentarians will just respond, naturally will respond in order to become popular. So I think the focusing on the parliamentarians is a second, even though we spend time on them, but more important are the people themselves. Now, with regard to the non-Muslims, now I would just mention that globally, the BDS movement is very strong in America as well as in Europe, I mentioned just now. In America, my interaction with them, the activists are mostly non-Muslims. And why are they so supportive is because of their strong consciousness about human rights. One of the reasons why the liberal Jews in America are supporting BDS is because, especially among the Democrats, is because of their their appreciation of the issue of human rights, about freedom and about justice. So once you are talking about equal rights, you will straight away, you will not agree with what Israel is doing to Palestine, because this is not equal rights. This is actually one community subjugating another community. So in America, they are very conscious about this issue of human rights. And because of that, it grows among, the support is very strong and growing among these young people who are very conscious about human rights. Similarly, in other countries, I went to Australia and I found out the activists there. I went to a conference on BDS. 90% of them basically were non-Muslims. Only about 10% were Arab and Muslims. Many other Muslims didn't attend it. But the activists in Australia are basically Australian non-Muslims. So similarly in the UK, I saw a demonstration recently organized by the Palestinian Solidarity Movement. Many of them are non-Muslim as well. Why? Is because of the appreciation of human rights abuse going on in Palestine. So as long as we talk about human rights, and this is, the issue of human rights becomes very attractive to non-Muslims. If you talk about it from the religious angle, then the non-Muslims may find it a bit difficult to join, because it's a religious issue. So that is the reason why the BDS movement approached the subject from the aspect of human rights. And of course, it's not against the issue of or the stance of Islam, because Islam is pro human rights and equality and justice and freedom. So it's not against Islamic teaching as well. So the point is, it's time for us to talk about the issue of human rights and freedom and justice in order to get more people all over the world to be part of the BDS movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
May we have another question or comment, please?
Sheikh Malik, معتصم.
Yes, brother, please. Any other comment from our brothers who are joining us today? We'd like to hear from you. Any other experience of BDS in another country?
الشيخ أبو بكر الآن دخل مؤخرا، ترحب به. Welcome, Sheikh Abu Bakr.
Sheikh Abu Bakr.
نعم.
Sheikh Abu Bakr, how are you? It's a great honor to have you with us today. Your mic is closed.
Yeah.
Your microphone is closed. If you could open your mic.
Sir, if you could unmute your microphone, please. Yes.
Hello?
Now,
Yeah.
It is okay.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sheikh Abu Bakr. It's a great honor. شكرا لك على حضورك هذه المحاضرة.
شكرا جزاكم الله خير.
حياكم الله.
يبارك فيك.
do you said anything?
So any more questions on this? Okay. Lately, I've been having discussions with parliamentarians from Latin America. And the main challenge actually was that we people tend to come and talk and vent our anger, and then nothing happens. In my opinion, BDS broke that, not really rule, but practice. BDS managed to produce something tangible, in the sense that it has succeeded in putting real pressure on the Israeli occupation. And in that way, activism makes a real sense. But just talking and writing papers, I think, is not enough. So in my opinion, every one of us on different levels, we should maybe make some kind of project and work collectively to make it something tangible and something that really leaves some effect on the Palestinian suffering. I mean, to ease the Palestinian suffering and help the Palestinian people to be liberated. And this needs a lot of discussion and consultation. I think BDS is a successful case, but of course it is not everything. It's a very big piece of the puzzle. And we in the Parliamentarian League for Al-Quds, I think we are maybe a smaller puzzle, but we are also a part of that puzzle. So everyone should join hands to make something bigger and more effective, because in our unity, most probably, inshallah, we will be more successful. This is just what came into my mind. I wanted to share it with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. I just want to maybe before ending my discussion on this, I would just want to share the need to work harder in certain countries, even in Muslim countries. For example, in Indonesia, they have hundreds of millions of Muslims. The country is very supportive of Palestinian cause, but the effort to boycott Israel and companies are not strong at all. See, that's what I'm saying. So we need to work hard. We have to work together with in a coordinated way. For example, when we target a particular company, for example, we have a campaign against Hewlett-Packard. Now, imagine if the whole country of Indonesia boycotts Hewlett-Packard or Caterpillar. This will be a great defeat for supporters of Israel, a great slap on the face of Israel. If the whole country boycotts certain companies which are involved in the injustices against Palestinians. Unfortunately, in the case of Indonesia, they are not coordinated at the moment. We have already set up, alhamdulillah, one group of people who are BDS activists over there. They are beginning to work, but it's a big challenge because you have different groups in Indonesia who are more concerned about local issues, and therefore, even though they can go and join demonstration that they have hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating, but then the actual effect on Israel itself is very minor. We need a coordinated effort focusing on certain organizations, for example, that would be more meaningful. This situation is also the same, I think, in other countries like Pakistan, also probably in India and some other countries, Muslim majority countries. We need to be coordinated and focused, and even though it sounds small, focusing on one company, but once the particular company decides that they cannot survive, they cannot get any market in Muslim world, if they continue to have relationship with Israel, then other companies will be scared to go and work or invest in Israel, and this will be this will snowball. This will snowball, and other companies will stay away, and this will then become like South Africa, because that was how it started. You have a company like Xerox, who decided that they cannot continue because people were boycotting their products all over the world. So this is where we need to work harder. And in Muslim countries, unfortunately, at the moment, even though they have very strong support, but they are not coordinated, especially in terms of boycott efforts. Thank you very much.